much for joining us for this Cricket Society online event. Just as a small piece of housekeeping, if everyone apart from Huw and I could keep their vocal on mute, that would be really helpful. Now, thank you for that. We're going to split the evening up into two or three chunks. I'm going to spend a bit of time talking to Huw about the Cricketer, a fantastic magazine which has been running for 104 years, which, of course, I'm sure virtually everyone on the call tonight will have read at some stage, and probably a high proportion of people have actually subscribed to it for many, many years. We'll also get Huw's views on the current state of English cricket, and then there'll be some time for people to have their questions answered. And I think if you could all use the chat for the questions, that would be really helpful. And then what I'll do at the end is read those out and allow Huw to spend some time answering those. So I hope that the evening will work well. I think probably we'll be talking in total for about an hour, but I've certainly been really looking forward to this. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Huw Turberville. Huw's from Suffolk, from Halesworth. He was just confirming to me, and he started his journalistic career on the East Anglian Daily Times. 25 years ago, he joined the Telegraph Group and wrote for both the Daily Telegraph and the Sunday Telegraph, and other publications as well. He joined the Cricketer in 2015, and he's somehow found time to write two books in that period, one called The Toughest Tour and the other The Cricketer's Anthology of the Ashes. He now has a new book coming out imminently. I think it's the 29th of April. It's published, and that's called The Final Test, The Uncertain Future of the County Game. Not content with all that, Huw also plays for Beddington Cricket Club. I was just telling him about the two games that the Cricket Society 11 played against Beddington in 2024 and 2023, and suggesting that if he had a moment, he could come and play against us. He'd probably pick up some cheap wickets and score some runs. So we've got a very fine journalist in our midst, and Huw's just put the latest edition of the Cricketer to bed, he was telling me. So I think I just need to perhaps give it a little bit more context, Huw, before we start the first question. But as I mentioned, the Cricketer was formed in 1921, and Sir Pelham Warner was the editor for 42 years. Until 1963. There've been other famous editors since. There was E.W. Swanton, Christopher Martin Jenkins, Reg Hayter, David Frith, Simon Hughes, and I think Richard Hutton as well. But Huw has been in the chair for quite a while. So Huw, maybe could we start off and talk to you a little bit about your role as editor of the Cricketer? What are the responsibilities of that? Not just to producing a magazine, but in terms of the weight of history on your shoulders.
Hello, everyone. Yes, so just to warn you, I'm a little bit jaded because it's press day today. So we've just put the bumper April issue to bed, as Peter said. So, I'm sort of a bit wobbly, but no, I might get the odd name wrong. But no, so I wrote the history of the Cricketer in, I think, 10 parts, decade by decade, when we celebrated our centenary 4 years ago in 2021. So yeah, I think you got most of the names there, didn't you? David Frith,
Mm.
he still writes for the magazine now. He left actually to form the other magazine, rival magazine, but he's now back with us. CMJ. Yeah, I mean, I said at my interview 10 years ago, not to be editor, but to be sub-editor, which was soon upgraded to deputy editor. That I said that you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and I absolutely feel like that. Yeah, I subscribed to the magazine in the 1980s when he was the boss, and in my wildest dreams, did I think that one day I would be editor of it, I suppose, or working on it. Always hoped to. Always sort of had the impression of sort of two or three, five people working in a small office in Tunbridge Wells or somewhere, but it's not too far from the truth. But No, it's been my dream come true for the last 10 years. Yeah, just celebrated 10 years.
Yeah, good for you. And day to day, your role, you obviously have a relatively small staff, as you just implied. When I read the publication, I get the impression that you're doing an awful lot of the hard yards as well in terms of putting it together. You don't just sit there lording it over people and just saying, everyone else come up with the stuff and I'll pop it into a nice looking magazine at the end. You're very hands-on with a lot of interviews, a lot of the articles. You do even do some of the reviews, I think, of some of the books. So um, even though you've got some very talented people working for you, clearly you like doing the writing as well.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah, it's a fantastic mix of writing, sub-editing, proofreading, commissioning, and having planning meetings. And so it's the my dream job, my perfect job. And my assistant, deputy editor, is James Coyne. And we've got a few people because we have a website and a digital team,
Hmm.
and they write for the web for the magazine, and James and I write for the website. So no, it's not two people, but we've got George DeBell, our chief correspondent, and we've got Nick Howson, who's head of digital. We've got Nick Friend, who has won awards for his county coverage. A young lad called Oscar Ress, who replaced Elizabeth Botcherby. Jim Heinsohn is my boss. He used to bowl left arm spin for Notts.
Hmm.
He's the MD. Um, so uh, Dave Sharman does the marketing and often does some writing for us. Owen Riley, social media. So yeah, there's a fair few of us, but yeah, on the magazine, the dedicated staff is James Corn and I and our designer Jeff Barton.
Yes, good. So, and you also, of course, pull in some very big names as well. You have people like Tanya Aldred, Mike Selvey, Vic Marks, and you've got Nasser Hussain doing a column for you. So you're able to attract these very high profile and well-known people, which must make a big difference.
Yeah, it's lovely. So I mean, a section of the magazine is sort of cast in stone every issue. We do 13 issues a year, so on average every 4 weeks, but sometimes it's five and sometimes it's three, depending. So we'll try and get the magazine started for the start of the Ashes or something like that. I inherited Mike Selvey. He was there when I joined 10 years ago. He's very popular with the readers. We have Vic Marks and Mike Brearley on rotation bi-monthly. We have Tanya, we have George, we have NASA. I hope I haven't left anybody out, but a lot, lovely regular columnists. Yeah. So that's a section of the book, as it's called. And I speak to them. I say, right, start of the issue. I say your deadline is such and such, and they might say, "Oh, I'm struggling for an idea. I might help them," or they might just say, "I want to write about this. This might." I try not to be prescriptive. I let them
Hmm.
uh, have their head. But yeah, it's handy that sort of just off the top of my head, a third of the magazine is sort of we know what's happening. Yeah, and then we have the features in the middle, which sort of try go for an eclectic sort of a feel, different things every month. And at the back, as you say, you've mentioned the reviews and the obits and things like that. So
Hmm.
yeah, very much the magazine's divided into three distinctive thirds.
Yes, I like to open it backwards actually, and I like to the article on what the cricketer from the past is doing now is one that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Sad to say that I like the obituaries and the book
Oh,
reviews, so I kind of
well,
like
fair enough.
reading it backwards. But that you mentioned David Frith, a wonderful writer, a wonderful cricket historian, and it's great that he's still committed to uh, um, being able to write in the publication. As you say, I think his history was that he actually got fired, I think, from the job, didn't he, by the owner of the Cricketer at the time. They had a disagreement, and he, as you also pointed out, went over and formed Wisden Cricket Monthly. But the Cricketer
Well, if
has.
he did get fired, if he got fired, Peter, it was because he went off to do the other
Okay,
magazine.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but no, anyway, he's back now, and
Yeah.
talking about the whatever happened to at the end of the magazine that you like. Yeah, I spoke to a lovely chap today, Hugh Wilson, ex Surrey.
Mm.
Met him at a function, and he was known as the new Bob Willis. So yeah, he'll be a future one.
Yeah, that well, that sort of person, yes, they're a
Yeah,
blast from the past. He
yeah,
played for Surrey, didn't he? I think.
yeah,
All
he
right.
did
So,
5 or 6 seasons
yeah,
for Surrey. He said the Cricketer magazine got him back on track. He went for a trial, and the long and the short of it was he went to a cricketer competition, and that put him on the road to a first class career. So, yeah, I'm gonna get in touch with him soon.
good on. So, what about the role of the magazine as a whole? It is an iconic publication, but what's its influence and circulation when you produce the publication? What do you feel your responsibility is as a magazine?
We
It,
cover cricket at all levels, so schools, club, international, and county. We're very clear about that, and women's cricket's really taken off last few years. I mean, I do have the readers, in my heart. I don't want to give them a magazine they don't want. I think that would be disastrous to sort of start trying to foist upon them something they don't want. So we have a survey every 2 years and listen to what they have to say. And yeah, so I mean, the readers are my boss, and we're trying to give them the magazine they want, and the surveys indicate that they're happy with the kind of mix that we have. I mean, I think always like Essex fans will always want more Essex cricket, and Gloucestershire will always want more Gloucestershire, and so forth. But I think we do strike a balance sort of pretty well, and our journalists get called on to sort of the Today program and Radio 5 Live and TMS to talk about the game. And yeah, I still think that the views of the editor or the deputy editor or the chief correspondent of the Cricketer are still relevant and pertinent. You mentioned my book, but Sheil Berry has just said, he gave me a nice quote. He said, the editor of the Cricketer should always be listened to. So I think there's a bit of standing in the game there.
yes.
I'm
And what
painfully aware I'm following in the footsteps of E.W. Swanson and CMJ and so forth. But yeah, I mean, it should have a bit of clout. Same with the Wisden Cricketers Almanac. Lawrence Booth every year has his sort of day or two in with his editorial and so forth. So yeah, I think still has a bit of clout in the game, definitely.
Yeah, good. And what's the circulation for the physical publication these days? And this, what about your digital following?
I wish I could tell you the figures, Peter, but they're healthy. They're healthy. They're very healthy.
Good.
Um, they
They've
do
ha they've held up well, have they,
pretty
over the
well.
years?
They do well for the business, don't they? And
Yeah.
I've been in print journalism, I suppose, for 30 years, and obviously, I'm not going to pretend that print journalism has sort of subsided somewhat. And I've worked for the East Anglia Daily Times, I worked for the Express, I worked for the Telegraph, but now we're holding up well, and the best magazines like the Spectator, Private Eye, and so forth have held up. A COVID. Interestingly, people had more time on their hands, so that saw a bit of an upturn. And so yeah, it's always a challenge, but yeah, we're also trying to build the digital project as well at the same time. So it's just getting a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear. And I was hopeful that you would say something along those lines because, I think suspect most people here, as I said, are either subscribers to the Cricketer or have read it fairly extensively over the years. I actually started subscribing to it in 1972, so I've done my bit and thoroughly enjoyed every copy of it. I think, I think you do have a lovely balance, and you were talking about some of the counties, but you give a lot of focus on red ball cricket, which I think people very much appreciate. But if you're interested in women's cricket or schools cricket, or indeed club cricket, there's something in there for everyone, and I think you cover the pyramid extremely well. George Dobell is a bit of a star writer, really, to have uh, got and as your chief writer, if I may call him that.
The chief
Um,
correspondent,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, How does he's been involved with the Azam Rafiq's story amongst other things? He seems to be able to get access to some really interesting people and has some very, very good ideas. Um, so it must be a tremendous coup having someone like that. But do you have to give him guidance on what he does, or do you just say, "Here's a blank page, come up with what you want"?
I wouldn't be too prescriptive about telling him what to write,
No.
but I'd like to think that I help him and he helps me. We're friends, and he's got a lovely turn of phrase. He's also an incredible people person. He's great fun to be around. He's effervescent, and you want to be around him. He has been at the cutting edge of the Azim Rafiq story, and you know, some people have their opinions about that, but it's been a revolutionary, groundbreaking time for the game, hasn't it?
It certainly has, yeah. There's all sorts of interesting things happening. And I think what I also like very much about the publication is that, you don't shy away from difficult issues. And you give space to if one read the magazine, you'd say you're very interested in tradition, you like the red ball game, but also you're very open-minded and encouraging about other parts of the game as well. And
It's just a
I,
balance. Yeah, it's just a
yeah.
balance, Peter. I mean, George and I are both passionate about the county championship. I don't think either of us would want it to change from 14 rounds, but I'm sure they're trying to change it to that. Yeah, we love the county championship. It's all about balance. It's about,
Mm,
having 40% red ball and 40% T20 and 20% 50 over. But I just don't want it to be saturation T20. I mean,
no.
I include the 100 in that. I mean, I'm not trying to get rid of the T20, but I think it's shooting ourselves in the foot. And the county championship feeds the test team. The test team, as far as I know, still pays the lion's share of the Sky contract. So I just think it's folly. It's just absolute
Mm.
folly.
Well, I think most people would say you have to have a pyramid, don't you? You have it in all sports, and it works so well. The idea of getting someone who perhaps lives in Cumbria, they come through Cumbria system, then end up in Lancashire, and then maybe in England.
Yeah.
If you don't have the opportunities for people, then uh, less people would take a career in cricket, I think.
Richard
Um,
Gordon isn't, meant to be a proponent of the 38 or 41 counties or whatever. And I mean, you said Cumberland, but I mean, isn't that where Stokes played?
yes,
Um,
he grew up in Keswick, and Liam Livingston's from Barrow, so
you,
yeah, they're two good examples. Yeah, and the chap that the fast bowler who kept getting injured, who played for Lancashire and North Hants, who played a bit for England T20, but he came up from there. Richard, someone or other. I
Please,
should, yeah,
please,
well
Richard.
done. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm detaining you by going off at a tangent here. The magazine's published by testmatchextra.com, and they've owned you for 15 years. I think I'm right in saying. So they're obviously a long-term owner. Um, I would imagine that's pretty helpful, isn't it?
I've enjoyed working for them for 10 years. I've got to say,
Yes.
but I've had no problems at all with them, and it's been very steady. It's been a very steady decade. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Good. Now, before we come on to the sort of current state of English cricket, I've just sort of got one more question for you. You're on this treadmill. You've got 13 publications to do. I think there's a supplement. You do all the stuff on the online uh, portion of the Cricketer as well. It's an enormous job, a big job, and as we've discussed, with huge responsibility. Are there any days in the year when you just say, "I cannot stand cricket anymore. Leave me alone"?
No, thankfully that was a worry of mine that I would go off cricket, but no, no, I still love it. I don't know. Yeah, I suppose I'm pretty loyal to my friends and my passions and interests, whether it be model railways or football or cricket or Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I don't get bored. Yeah.
Good. Well, that's excellent news because I think, as I said, you've done a really good job, and I think I really look forward to it when it pops through my letterbox. I thoroughly enjoy it, and it's packed with information, and it takes, I reckon, a good month to read it all. I was just been combing through the March issue just to make sure I'd covered some of the bases before our talk tonight, and it just reminded me how much there's in there. So perhaps we can now move on to
Just
some of the.
during COVID,
Yeah.
you said like you enjoyed it coming through the letterbox, but yeah, a lot of people said in COVID it was a real sort of comfort to them,
Yeah.
uh, especially if you're living on your own or something. So yeah, yeah.
No, that's good to hear. So let's talk about the current state of English cricket because I'm sure everyone's keen to hear your views on it. You just briefly there talked about red ball cricket, and as I've said, you've supported that with vigour. You'd very much like, I think, probably like most people, to keep the um, number at 14 fixtures. Why is everyone in authority and elsewhere uh, um, in influence so keen to reduce the number of fixtures, which hardly sound like a huge number?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually, I mean, I get some flack for saying 14. I mean, a lot
Mm.
of our readers say, well, why aren't you asking for 16? You know, and it's good. We've got, if you had two divisions of nine, um, they'd play eight, eight teams home and away, 16, isn't it? So 14's a bit sort of weird, isn't it? I mean, you've got 10 teams in Division One and eight in Division Two. So it doesn't really work. Anyway, yeah, the Vaughan, Strauss, and people, Andrew Strauss and Michael Vaughan, I should pay them respect. I mean, I love them as cricketers, I love them as England captains, but that they've kind of led the calls for it to be reduced to 10. We had the latest issue is the red ball empire holding the line, and we did a sort of audit of how much red ball cricket is being played around the world. And I suppose 14 is more than the other countries. Australia play 10, New Zealand play 8, and so forth. West Indies play 7, but 7 rounds. But the weather. I mean, the weather's got to be a factor in it, hasn't it? I have
Yeah.
heard some really clever ideas about how you give 12 rounds. Really clever ideas. I wish I could share it with you. Actually, the person who told me this won't let me publish it yet, but it's really clever formula that he's come up with. Um, Again, but if I write that sometimes, I have 12 rounds, not and
Mm.
quite a few angry letters about it. So it's a very delicate subject. They're having the domestic review this year, and I fear again 10 rounds will be on the agenda. And with the British weather as it is, 2 rounds could easily be wiped out. Um, so it's disappointing, isn't it? Yeah, I can see the logic of 10, I guess, in the sense of having maybe three divisions of 6 teams. There's a neatness to it, isn't there? I think something similar was played with the Bob Willis Trophy in 2020, but the more the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. No, so one of the Cricket Society events recently, Jamie Cox, who you no doubt know,
No, right, yeah.
and the Somerset CEO, the former county captain of Somerset, who grew up in Australia, he made a really interesting comment. He said, what makes English cricket is, first of all, the respect county championship has from all around the world. And he said, that's always been the case. He says it's the sort of thing people in Australia would aspire to play in. But he also said, the history of English cricket is based around a playing culture, whereas in Australia, it's much more of a training culture. They have more space historically. But that doesn't mean everyone has to follow them, does it? And I think that when people say, "Oh, we only play 8 games" or whatever it might be in Australia, there is a reason for that, and there's a historical reason for it. But uh, I would always say, if I was let's just say a young spin bowler coming into cricket and wanting to play regularly, the schedule doesn't really give me that chance to play regularly. I can go and practice in the nets every day of the week for hours if I want to, but that's not going to prepare me to be actually a frontline spinner in county cricket unless I play regularly. And I think anyone who's ever played cricket would, at any level, would say the more you play, the better you tend to get.
Yeah, I mean, So, I mean, dealing with what you've just said. So, I mean, in Australia, there's 6 states, so it makes sense to have 10 games, I suppose. The weather's more reliable out there. But Jamie Cox gave me a lovely interview in the magazine, and he said Leicestershire versus Derbyshire, I think, or Northampton, is an event. It's an event in itself, and it should be treated as an event, and you should be very proud to play in that. And yeah, I mean, on the subject of spinners, I mean, Shoaib Basher's had his record for England is better than it is for his county, isn't it? And he was let go by Surrey. He's been playing for Somerset. He's had a loan period at Worcestershire, but you can't expect him to produce brilliance in April and September. I mean, they need to be playing. They have needed to have been playing more in June, July, August.
Yeah. We got at the last our award ceremony last November. Richard Thompson was the guest of honor, and we did an interview with him. And I mean, his background obviously is being the chair of the Surrey, and Richard Gould having been the chief executive of Surrey. He's continued to say it's very important to him that he supports the county game. Do you have faith in the fact that him and Richard Gould will be able to hold the fort and keep that line?
So Richard Thompson used to play for Coshulton, which is no longer around, but that's where I live, Coshulton. So Richard Gould, I have amiable dealings with. I don't doubt they want 18 counties to survive. Um, I don't know for a fact that they want to reduce the number of rounds from 14 to 10. We kind of hoped in a way, I'm afraid, that they would come in and say, "Oh, the 100's been marvelous. Thanks very much. It's done its job. Let's put it to bed, and the county game can have the schedule back." But they haven't. I do kind of appreciate that at Surrey didn't need the 100. Surrey is a juggernaut of a business that doesn't need the 100. They sold out every blast game. They make millions from conferencing. They've got a hotel and so forth. So when they were bosses of Surrey, they didn't need the 100. I do appreciate that they've had to look at it now from the perspective of 18 first class clubs. But I have to say, I'm disappointed, and I'm sure a lot of people are as well. Uh, uh, the 100 has been good for women's cricket. I can see the appeal of it, but I haven't really sort of said this for a little while, but certainly readers probably have certainly used to my views that the English summer isn't that long, and it's just a nightmare to get in a 50 over tournament, a county T20, because the counties aren't going to get rid of the T20. A proper county championship that factors in the British weather, the 100, it's just too much. And the Gould, Richard Thompson, Mike Atherton, others have said that there's one too many there, and but still it goes on because it has powerful supporters in the game.
Yes, okay. So James Coyne did a very good double-page spread on the recent 100 auction and the implications of it for the game. You've had another month to consider that. I've read some of the interviews with the people that have bought it, and my broad conclusion is that we're dealing essentially with business people who are used to being very successful, and they'll want to make money out of it. I did see that one of the people in California did mention county cricket very briefly, and then Jonathan Goldstein, who had bought Chelsea Football Club with Todd Bowley and has bought the Trent Rockets now, the stake in the Trent Rockets, he rather in an exaggerated way, kept mentioning that he'd gone to see Essex when Gooch was playing for them when he was growing up, which just seemed to me he was trying a little too hard. But apart from that, I'm not aware that any of them, any of the investors, have shown the slightest bit interest in anything other than their immediate purchase.
Yeah, I mean, you say about money, but I mean, some people are saying, how can they make money when they're literally just buying a club for 4 weeks, and they've spent a phenomenal sum of money to do it for a 5-year period or whatever. To me, it strikes me as sort of a kudos, a souvenir,
Hmm.
the bragging rights that they own a cricket club at Lords. To me,
Yes, interesting.
not
Do you
necessarily.
think because obviously some of the clubs are now going to be have the majority stake owned by or teams from the IPL that Indian Stars will now populate the 100?
So that, I mean, I get confused slightly, but I think they've bought 49% stakes, haven't they?
49, sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Yorkshire have let them have more than that. I think I'm right in saying the Delhi consortium own Hampshire now, so they own pretty much 100% of it. You'd think that some Indian cricketers would come, but I've also heard that they won't. So
Mm. No, interesting, because you'd
they
think that,
probably, yeah, they probably could get. There's more money probably available now for Shaheen Shah Afridi and Pat Cummings to try and get them to come rather than go off to play for San Francisco or whatever. But Stephen Smith, I think he played for Washington or something. So Steve Smith. So you'd think there's a bit more money for that for those people, but I don't necessarily see that Virat Kohli and others are going to come at this time.
yeah, no, so I'll be intrigued to see how it all pans out. What about the sense of identity of these teams? Because I always use the example of Johnny Bairstow, should be playing for the team based in Leeds, but he's playing for the Welsh Fire. He's there for 3 or 4 weeks of the year. He's about as Welsh as I am. And you can't, how can anyone identify that when someone's just passing through?
Seems ludicrous, yeah. I mean, why is Joe Root playing for Nottinghamshire? Yeah, no, I'm surely there must have been a more sensible way of allocating resources. It just seems daft. I suppose, I mean, Yorkshire would have maybe too many players with Bairstow, Root, Brook, say Northern Superchargers. But yeah, I completely agree. It doesn't. These things don't help. They really
No.
don't. It just seems daft. Yeah, some of the names are daft. Some of the costumes are daft. And some of the player allocation is silly, frankly.
No, I can't really see the appeal of walking down the street with a yellow shirt with red inflections, with a packet of peanuts on the front. Now, you might argue that some football strips aren't too far from that, but they've got a sense of identity and a sense of history. Which
Yeah.
cricket teams, like these new cricket teams, don't have, and the British tradition, I think, holds hard, doesn't it? So I think the marketing people have got to get much more astute, haven't they, and trying to connect it to history rather than just thinking that everyone's going to suddenly think this is the most wonderful thing that's ever happened.
Well, I think they'll be reviewed. I mean, we have to. I fully concede that lots of youngsters and people who don't support county cricket like the 100, and I'm the first to say that. And we've got people who work for the cricketer whose kids are thoroughly into Trent Rockets and so forth. And it's just how many new fans are there, and how many old fans or traditional fans have been lost. And it been worth the collateral damage? Um, I don't. I suppose I'm in a bit of an echo chamber where I hear the views of cricketer readers who tend to be traditional. I'm traditional. George DeMille is traditional. We're a broad church, though. James Coyne, my deputy, says he does see the need for an 8-team tournament to rival the IPL. So I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying in an ideal world you'd have all of it, but it's a small summer, and if I made my choice, I would dispense with the 100 and have a two-division T20. But I'm not saying that no one likes the 100 or it's grossly unpopular or whatever. It just seems an awfully complicated way of doing it. That you have to, the ECB up to now have been paying 1.3 million per county to green light the 100 and things like that. It just seems awfully complicated.
I'm going to read you out a question from one of the listeners, actually. So rather than waiting to the end, I thought this was a rather good question, given what we've just been talking about, from Martin Levitt. He says, Huw, now that the 100 has a majority of Indian owners of the 8 franchise teams, how quickly will the tournament be converted to a typical T20 competition? Very good question.
Yes, it's got four owners are Indian, and owners are Indian American, aren't they? I think they'll keep the format until the TV contract with Sky runs out in 2028. So I reckon it will go T20 in 2029.
Yeah, so then the 100 ball competition will die a death. It's
Would
never got never got off the ground.
They're ridiculous. Well, I mean, it lasted. It will have lasted 8 years, I suppose. But ridiculous gimmick that it is what will be cast aside because it's absolutely daft that you don't play the world standard T20 that is so popular in the IPL, the CPL, the PSL, etc.
Now I'm going to
Can I ask a question, Peter, please, if
sure.
that's possible? I had Lawrence Booth talking to us at the Hampshire Cricket Society today, and he said the Indian population of 1.4 million, the massive percentage of that watched cricket on TV. That is the most important thing in the whole world of cricket, isn't it? That TV audience in that country. And that's what will happen to our 100. It will just become another IPL product, a division or a regional
Yeah. Well, 1.4
division
1.4 billion, isn't it? And,
away from the 100. Yeah, sorry, 1 billion.
that's a,
You know, take the
Sorry, Martin, you're cracking up a bit. Do you want to put it on the chat, and I'll come back to that in a
yeah. I mean,
moment.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Martin is yeah. I mean, India rule world cricket, and yeah, and we've just seen from the Champions Trophy that they do what they want, don't they? I mean, I can understand people having misgivings about going to a country where they feel in danger, but yeah, we've just seen, haven't we, that by playing their games in Dubai and so forth, they call the shots, don't they? And
yeah.
yeah, the 100 will be part of this global network. I mean, it's got different owners, slightly different owners, isn't it, to the IPL? But there'll be an element of players globe trotting around the world, playing in the 5 or 6 major tournaments. Yeah.
Good. Now, so I'm going to move on to the prospects of the England men's team and winning the Ashes, and I'll read you out a question as well that is relevant, I think, from Mike Williams, who says, "Have we reached the point where performance in the Championship doesn't mean much in terms of England's selection, i.e., Bethel still hasn't scored a first-class 100? Does that diminish the importance of the Championship?" Well, that's a sort of sub-question, but why don't you deal with the Ashes first and the selection of that team?
Yeah, I mean it's been the England team has been picked for a year or two, and they're not looking at Championship, are they? And the great conundrum of Liam Dawson at Hampshire, what is going on there? The guy averages 40 with the bat, 23 with the ball, the most consistent sort of spin bowling all rounder. Something's happened there. We don't know exactly what's happened, but he's not in the equation. Uh, yeah, they're picking people on physique, potential, how they've shaped up on YouTube. Josh Hull, 3 wickets, I think, in the Championship last year for Leicestershire was picked. Um, yes, there's no two ways about it. I don't think Robert Key's even trying to disguise the fact that they don't have much faith in how somebody necessarily bowls on a green seamer in April, and it doesn't have that much bearing on what will happen in the Optus Stadium in Perth uh, come November. Um, as to the Ashes, I fear the worst, but maybe I'm a bit of a pessimist. Maybe I'm a bit of a Victor Meldrew. I don't know, but um, Baz Ball was brilliant, wasn't it? To start with that
Mm.
first, second innings run chases, Bairstow route were amazing, weren't they? But it seems to have plateaued now, and probably we're doing slightly worse than we were under pre-COVID. Uh, I know we beat Sri Lanka 2-0 in the running the last test, but I hate the recklessness of just sort of giving away test winning positions like we did against Australia at Lords in 2023, like we did against Sri Lanka at the Oval last summer. I think ruthless Australia will punish us for such wanton recklessness. I fear. I hope I'm wrong.
They must be licking their lips at being able to milk Shoaib Bashir for 4 or 5 and over without, they need to keep him on for 20 overs. That would be ideal for them, wouldn't it? They've got a
Oh,
history
well,
of,
yeah,
uh,
well, the pitches are getting greener and the Kookaburra ball has got more lacquer on it now. So it might even be that they just turn to Bethel and Joe Root to bowl spin and have four seamers. But just to say on Bethel, I mean, fair play to them. He hasn't made 100, and we thought, what on earth is going on? But he did look the part in New Zealand. So, um, they know, there's some clever people running their eye over, McCullum, Stokes, Key are looking at these people, and they're spotting potential. So, I think it's sad for the county championship, but some they get right, some they get wrong, and Bethel perhaps does look the part, doesn't he?
Yes, I mean, I would always say Liam Dawson would have been a far better bet to play in India that winter than Tom Hartley, as an established cricketer of many years standing, who churning out performances like you just described year after year after year.
Indeed, but then
Yeah,
Tom Hartley did brilliantly in that first test,
he did.
and they spotted his potential as somebody with height who can bowl the correct lengths for India. I mean, he sort of fizzled out a bit, didn't he? But so they've got some right and they've got some wrong. Personally, I would not disparage the county championship, and I would reflect the performances. I mean, Jack Carson, who I like, the hobby horse of mine, but I mean, he took 50 wickets for Sussex with his off spin last summer. He's a very good bat, very good fielder, and I just think that must be a bit dispiriting for him.
Yes, he certainly. We considered him seriously for the Cricket Society Male Cricketer of the Year award. We actually gave it to Matthew Hurst in the end, who was the wicket-keeper for Lancashire, who batted very well too. But we've got I'm very sympathetic to your view about him as well. I hope he does well in the first division this summer. So on Test cricket, Damien Kelly, one of our members, has said, should we be confident that the Test game beyond England, Australia and India will survive the next decade? Difficult question, but of course we're not. Only one of those teams is in the Test Championship final, of course, isn't it? South Africa are playing Australia.
Yeah, Neil Manthorpe has written for the Cricketer at length about how the fact we shouldn't be confident that South Africa's Test future is there. We have Rex Clementine writing for us about Sri Lanka. Yeah, their passion for it does seem to be waning, doesn't it? I mean, they had a lovely two-test series against Gaul against Australia recently, but I don't like two-test series. I don't like back-to-back tests. So yeah, I mean, it's under threat without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, in the book that I've written with David Gale, Graham Gooch, etc., Richard Hadley, that Merv Hughes, they all say that it's under threat. Yeah,
Mm. But
Pakistan.
talking of things being under threat, we could probably say the same thing about 50 over cricket. And Phil Reeves here says, do you think the ghastly performance by England in the international 50 over game so far this year is partly down to the downgrading of the domestic 50 over competition?
Definitely, absolutely, and the approach of batting like it's a T20 game. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, how could it not be to do with the fact that they don't practice? It's sort of counterfactual to say it's nothing to. Michael Vaughan said recently that it's nothing to do with that. It's that's Orwellian doublethink, isn't it? To say you don't need to practice at something. It's stupid, isn't it? I mean, yeah. I mean, we
Well,
have.
you see that with Phil Salt, don't you? I mean, he approached his 50 over cricket as if he's playing in a 20 over game, and it
And Liam Livingston and James Smith and other people who failed to give Root and Duckett their support.
yeah. So if you look at the 50 over team, the backdrop to this is Ben Stokes as a captain has been extremely successful and very popular and highly regarded in his years as captain, whereas Joss Butler has now given up being the 50 over and 20 over skipper, having inherited a great team from Owen Morgan. We've failed really to move on from that in both T20 and 50 over cricket. So now Brendan McCullum's in charge of that as well. What's going to happen to the captaincy? Who's going to do that?
Well, absolutely shouldn't be Ben Stokes because
No.
the whole Ashes strategies on his shoulders, and I think it'd be absolutely disastrous if he got injured in a one-day game. I mean, it would just be a terrible look, terrible look. He's got to play in the Test matches. He played maybe in the Zimbabwe Test to warm up. the 5 tests against India and the Ashes, and I don't think he should be taking any more cricket at all. I mean, he got injured in the 100, I think last year, wasn't it? So, no, absolutely not. Get Harry Brook. You know, I think the next 50 over World Cup's 2027, isn't it? So let's start with Harry Brook. He did okay, didn't he, in the series last
Mm.
autumn, where we all needed about 4 jumpers. But no, Harry Brook, I think for me, 50 over.
And
And
then in T20, you'd have a separate captain.
no, I think Harry Brook. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
again,
I
yeah.
think on that. Yeah, I think Harry Brook. Yeah.
Good. Just going to dart back to the our favourite subject, the schedule. And Alan Hyam says there are 3 proposals being worked up for the schedule change. The counties are going to be involved in shaping these through the PGC with a view to reaching consensus by June. 12 counties need to agree any change. And that's a statement, but he also says which counties are likely to support reducing first-class cricket.
Well, Alan probably knows more about it than I do. He's Mr. Detail Man.
Yeah.
He's he's been helping me with various stories. I mean, he's brilliant. So, uh, I mean, I know of counties who would go for 12 rounds of championship. And obviously there'll be some who have 10. I mean, the counties are more worried about losing their blast games, aren't they?
Yeah. So it's they want us to stay in the T20, obviously, because that's where they make some money.
Yeah.
But
So
their sacrifice would be to say, well, actually, if we shave the odd game off, it's not going to kill us. And um,
no, I mean the ECB probably will advocate that the number of blast home games is reduced from 7 to 5. But I mean, Ashley Giles of Worcestershire's on the record as saying that would be disastrous and calamitous for the business. So
hmm,
I think they'll get more resistance about reducing the home blast games from 7 to 5 than they will the championship games from 7 to 5.
yeah, good. Okay, no, that's very helpful. What about the women's game in England now? We obviously got pulverized in Australia, and we lost every game. And I think what was interesting to me is that there was a big fuss made about it, whereas perhaps women's cricket hasn't had that reaction in the past, which I think probably says that the expectations of the supporters of the England cricket team and the followers of the England cricket team expected rather better. And the standard of the fielding in particular came under scrutiny. And I mean, some of it was, a bit like I'm sure you wouldn't put up with it in Beddington Cricket Club in any of your teams. It was poor, wasn't it? And technically, you would expect full-time professional cricketers to be much better at doing the basics.
You'll get me in trouble, Peter, but yeah. No, yeah, I mean, Alex Hartley's correctly shone a light on fielding and fitness, and no one likes to see England lose to Australia and in such demoralising fashion, 16-0. I think it needs to be a bit of a sea change, and I think England fans or cricket fans are thinking that they're not getting the results that the investment should be producing. Yeah, so they need to step up. I think I put in the magazine that they could do with a kind of academy experience that the England men had in about 22 years ago when under the great Rod Marsh in Adelaide, and maybe go and have a sort of a camp in Australia the winter before the next time they go out there to get used to the conditions and really start sort of stepping up now because I mean I think Alex Hartley and people probably know more than I do about it, and they're saying they need to really step up professionally, right, the
Hmm.
professionalism.
Yeah, it seems to me that there isn't yet the filter of really good players coming through on the production line. And do you think now that there are going to be specific or this first season, is it, where specific counties are now going to have their own team linked to the club? That'll make a big difference. Once again, about identity and structure.
I think it's nice for identity, and I think it's nice for you guys and the readers of the Cricketer to. I think that would be a nice thing to latch onto, won't it? That 6 women, rather, not actually not to blaze, aren't they? But I think the fact that they're playing under our beloved county banners is going to help, yeah, with appeal and identity, and Yeah, rather than teams like Central Sparks or something, I think it'd be much easier to support
Yeah.
Lancashire, whatever. Yeah.
Because that strikes me as a way that gives people then a degree of continuity and gives them a chance to actually play regular cricket in the right conditions. And from that, you start to develop uh, people. But what would your solution now? I mean, be it's very easy to say fire the captain and fire the coach for the England women's team. It seemed I thought Heather Knight conducted herself extremely well in a very difficult set of circumstances, and she continued to play pretty well, but she was let down essentially by the weakness of the team against a side of the highest quality. And she's not the first per England captain to have experienced that.
Heather's been brilliant, hasn't she? But she has been doing it for 9 years, so
Yeah,
that's an awfully long time, isn't it? So it's probably, I think she might well come to the conclusion it's time for fresh blood. I don't want to particularly call for people to lose their jobs. Um, in terms of the coach, John Lewis, but he was meant to look like me apparently. I'm told John Lewis is my lookalike. So, um, but yeah, I mean, there's people more expert as to what personnel could replace those two. But usually, yeah, usually an Ashes humiliation leads to change, doesn't it?
and so the person leading the review is Claire Connor, who is the person ultimately responsible for the team's performance. So that doesn't augur well in my view.
She's a great lady,
Yeah,
Claire. So hopefully she'll. I'm sure she'll know what she's doing. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who would come in as coach, but Sarah Glenn's been mentioned as a possible captain's candidate, isn't it?
I
Until you
didn't know that. Yeah.
yeah, until you try these people, you don't know, do you? I mean, it's like Harry Brook, and people might have feelings about Harry Brook, but I mean, eh, let's give it a go. I do think 9 years is an awful long time to be
Yeah,
captain.
it's I guess everyone runs out of puff, don't they, eventually, and people stop listening, and it's the same in any job, isn't it? Hopefully not in your case, though, Huw, that your colleagues still seem to be listening to you, I'm pleased to say. Yeah,
Well, I mean, the men's captaincy cycle was 4 years, wasn't it?
yeah,
Atherton, Nasser, Alex Stewart, and Alex Stewart would have liked to have carried on before, but generally it was sort of 4 years, wasn't it? I remember Nasser always telling me when I was doing his Sunday Telegraph column that 4 years was the cycle, wasn't it?
yeah. And just final question, because we're coming up to our hour, and I think I've asked all the questions on the chat. But if people have any more they'd like to ask, would they mind firing them through now? But um, in the time you've been involved in journalism, the world's changed a lot, hasn't it? But the coverage of cricket now is very comprehensive, in my opinion. We obviously have radio and television of coverage of county cricket, which people can access. We have very good publications surviving the test of time, and then online you can go to uh, um, ESPN Cricket Info or Cricket Archive or all sorts of fascinating areas and disappear down Warrens, can't you? So there is something out there for everyone. Do you think there's the access to information about cricket makes it even more appealing as a sport to people?
Yeah, I mean, you've struck an optimistic tone there, Peter. I started working for the East Anglian Daily Times. They sold 30,000 in my day, and now they sell 8 or 9,000. So papers are sort of selling fewer these days. You mentioned BBC Radio, but if you Google BBC Radio, there's several stories out there saying that they're reviewing it. I mean, definitely the costs are coming into it. And the BBC license fees under threat. So it's definitely being looked at. I sort of tend to worry a little bit about sort of just sort of generic sort of writing produced by um, uh, companies that just file the same story to 9 publications rather than having individual writers at the games. We've got AI to think about now. I wouldn't want to read a report that's cobbled together by AI just looking at a scoreboard. So you're optimistic.
Yeah.
I'll try and be, Peter. I'll try
No,
and.
good. Okay, thank you. No, well, it's a different world, isn't it? That's for sure, and one
It
that's
certainly is. It was
but
all
but, but
newspaper. It was all
potentially very confusing as well.
It was all
So
newspaper when I started. We just started, emailing each other. We thought, what's this email thing that keeps breaking our
yeah,
computer, internet and so forth. So it's certainly all changed. But yeah, it's a struggle for print to survive. It's a struggle for digital to sort of move up and become profitable. So yeah, but look, if you look around, there's still stuff out there. Yeah.
good. Well, I'm pleased to say we're going to have to keep you on for a few more minutes because there've been a flurry of questions. Douglas Miller says, "What should have been done with India's refusal to play in Pakistan in the recent Champions Trophy?" And Douglas suggests ejection from the event and forget the money. Would anyone have the courage to stand up to India?
I don't know. We all know Douglas, one of our loyal readers. Hello, Douglas. Uh, I do have a little bit of sympathy. I've got friends who sort of say, they wouldn't want to go out there. They're scared for their life. Controversial view maybe, but it's a tricky situation, isn't it? I think it was mismanaged, the whole thing, wasn't it? Poor South Africa having to go to Dubai just in case they were in the semi-final was farcical, wasn't it? But I don't see anybody standing up to India now. It's like American baseball, isn't it? Where, Japan and Cuba and Mexico might play baseball, but India are boss, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how it's all changed. When I was growing up, we used to annihilate them in Test cricket, and of course, in the late '60s. But then that
It's still
team that won hit.
competitive. Yeah, but
Sorry,
it's still competitive, Pete, isn't it? I mean,
of course,
Australia have just beaten them, and I don't see them dominating on the field. I still think England and Australia and others will be competitive on the field. Behind the scenes, they are going to call the
yeah.
shot.
No. Richard Buxton just asked about who should replace Butler as captain. You've already dealt with that. I think it was Harry Brook, Richard. And then Alan Hyam says, "What's the latest on the non-hosting 100 counties wanting to play their own short-form competition whilst the hundreds on?" I didn't know anything about that actually, but
Well,
maybe, yeah.
that was my story in the February edition of the
Okay.
Cricketer.
So
Yeah.
having said I read it from cover to cover, I clearly didn't.
You probably saw the March one, didn't you? But no, I suggested that the 11 non-host counties should get together and insist upon having their own T20 tournament in the school summer holidays, because a couple of counties I speak to are completely unhappy with having a 50 over tournament with second string sides not filling their grounds. I think Sussex has gone on the record of saying, having 4 50 over games with a depleted side makes them X amount of money, but if they had T20, they could make X times 10 or something like that. So, but are the ECB going to let them do that? Are the host counties going to let them do that? Is it stipulated in the 100 clauses that you can't have a rival T20 tournament? There's so many questions, but I fear for the non-host counties if they're made to carry on playing 50 over games with nice crowds and lovely loyal fans like us lot and me. But I think they need to be allowed to make some proper money in the school summer holidays by hosting T20. I think Alan's already said to me he doesn't think it's going to happen. So fair enough. But yeah, I think
Interesting. Yeah.
the way. Yeah.
So I think we're coming up to our hour now, Huw. Thank you very much indeed for being such a willing interviewee. You've told us a lot about the cricketer and your job there and the people that you have working for you. I think we'd all agree that we'd want it to continue to thrive. It's great to hear that you feel it is doing so well, and that's very, very encouraging indeed. It's been a big part of my life, for, as I said, for over 50 years. And I'm sure a lot of other people here have thoroughly enjoyed it for similar lengths of time or even longer. So we greatly appreciate the work that you've done. And thank you also for telling us. We didn't want to ruin all your articles. You might be have all sorts of interesting things that you were about to write about that you can't really tell us about, which is no bad thing. But thank you for being so open about your views as well.
Oh,
It's a changing time for cricket, isn't it? It
yeah,
really is.
the April issue of the magazine's out in on March 21st, and it has 2 pages per county. It's the season preview, and it's the one with the wall chart. So it's the must buy, and you can subscribe to Cricketer and save quite a bit of money. You know, if you subscribe to 12 issues a year, £4.37, I think, an issue, as opposed to paying on the newsstand. So please come and join our club. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the calendar is a lovely thing to have. I've
Yeah,
got
they're wonderful.
just up to my left here, and all the other many accessories that you sell. It's great.
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed for your time. There's lots of people saying thank you very much and fascinating and entertaining. So I'll write you separately and thank you. But I think you deserve, as you just put the magazine to bed now for April, deserve the remaining 4 hours of today off. So.
Never
Huw,
be. And my book comes out on April 24th, final
yes,
test.
can I just get you to do that plug as well? The final test, the
The final
uncertain
test.
future of the county game. Just tell us again what that covers and
Oh, yeah,
and who's publishing it.
yeah, uncertain future of the first class game. It's by Bloomsbury, and it's a kind of exploration of am I a bit backward? Am I a bit sort of too conservative and not embracing T20? And why do some people embrace all this change and some people don't? And what can be done to save Test cricket? And does it need windows for Test cricket? And there's lots of different people in there: Gooch, Gower, Gatting, Richard Hadley, Verve Hughes, Reece Topley, Donald Topley. So lots of different views, and it's a bit of an exploration of the great tumultuous change that the game's feeling at this moment.
And will you be out there doing some events to support it?
Yeah,
Uh,
Derek Pringle and I are doing something in Fleet Street in April, and I've got a book launch, and yeah, I did a load of talks, I think 2023. So I'm available for gigs again.
Yes, good. Because I mean, we do organise a lot of different events through the Cricket Society in the Southwest, the Midlands, and in London.
Yeah,
But
went to Dorset a few years ago, and
yeah,
that was very pleasant.
and Martin Levitt's final question was, Huw, do you enjoy talking to cricket societies, talking to cricket lovers about your love and perception of the game? I suspect the answer is yes. You've been doing it very well for the last hour.
I do enjoy it. Yeah, I do enjoy it. Although it's interesting, isn't it? It's certainly quite scary to be up in front of an audience. I can't hear what people are saying. I gather that they're being very pleasant, so that's great to hear. I talked in front of a load of six formers at the Oval the other day, and when the second joke goes flat and everybody's doodling on their plan, you don't quite know how things are going to go. But I did Broad Halfpenny Down Society, the Bat and Ball pub. Is it Broad Halfpenny Down? But the Hambledon. Sorry, I did Hambledon a few years ago. That was hugely enjoyable. So yeah, no, I enjoy it. Yeah. Sorry, some of my jokes fall flat, but but yeah, no, it's fun. Yeah, yeah,
Good.
with like-minded people.
Yeah, no, good. I think, well, anyone that likes cricket, regardless of its forms, good enough for me. So many thanks, Huw. Have a very nice evening. Good luck with your book and continued power to your elbow in terms of the cricketer. Thanks again very much indeed. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Huw. That was brilliant.
Thanks very much, everyone. Good to see you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.